At 6:47 a.m. on December 23, 1944, Hauptmann Klaus Richter, commander of the 2nd Company of the 506th Heavy Panzer Battalion, stood in the cupola of his Tiger Eye. He scanned the horizon through his Zeiss binoculars, and what he saw made his blood run cold. Columns of black smoke were rising from the Ardennes Valley, but this was not the smoke of Allied artillery impacts. It was the greasy, choking smoke of burning German tanks. Richter was 31 years old and had commanded armor since the invasion of Poland in 1939. He had personally destroyed 47 enemy tanks on the Eastern Front, but what he was witnessing that morning defied everything he had been taught at the Panzertrupp schools. Facing him were not the disorganized units of a week ago, but 50 tanks of the 3rd Royal Tank Regiment, 3rd RTR, the spearhead of the British XXX Corps. The British were systematically dismantling his division. If you want to know how the British halted the German juggernaut using superior doctrine and the most lethal gun of the war, hit the like button. It helps us share more stories like this. But to understand what Richter was seeing, we need to go back 72 hours. December 20, 1944. The Ardennes offensive was at its zenith. Hitler had launched his final, desperate gamble, concentrating 400,000 soldiers and 1,200 tanks in a surprise attack through the Belgian forests. German propaganda promised this operation would split the Allied armies and change the course of the war. The Panzers would dominate Europe again, just as they had in 1940. The reality was brutally different. The Heavy Panzer Battalion was an elite unit. Their Tigers weighed 57 tons each. They mounted the dreaded 88mm kilowatt K36L56 cannon, capable of destroying almost any Allied tank from 2,000 meters. Their 100mm frontal armor could shrug off standard Allied rounds. In theory, they were invincible. In practice, they had a problem German generals refused to admit. The Tiger consumed 540 liters of petrol for every 100 kilometers on broken terrain. In the deep snow and mud of the Ardennes, that consumption doubled. Every tank needed constant refueling, and the German supply convoys were being massacred by RAF Typhoons prowling the skies. On December 21, Richter's company had 14 operational Tigers. By dawn on the 22nd, only 9 remained. Not due to combat, but due to empty fuel tanks. But the true problem wasn't just logistical, it was tactical. The British had learned hard lessons in the hedgerows of Normandy. Standard Sherman tanks had suffered devastating losses against the Tigers, earning the grim nickname Ronsons, light's first time, among the Germans. However, the British had adapted faster than the Germans anticipated. They introduced the Sherman Firefly. This was not the standard tank the Germans mocked. The British had modified the Sherman to mount the QF 17-pounder anti-tank gun. It was a weapon of terrifying velocity. Unlike the American 75mm or 76mm guns, the British 17-pounder firing APDS, armor-piercing discarding sabot, rounds could tear through the frontal armor of a Tiger from over 1,000 meters away. The British doctrine was not a chaotic swarm, it was a disciplined hunt. They utilized hull-down tactics, exposing only their turrets from behind ridges, and deployed the Fireflies as long-range snipers, masked by standard Shermans and Cromwells acting as bait and flankers. Let's return to the morning of December 23. At 5:30 a.m., British reconnaissance units from the 29th Armoured Brigade detected Richter's column moving toward the Meuse River crossings near Dinant. The report reached the British command post at 5:47 a.m. By 6:15 a.m., the squadrons of the 3rd Royal Tank Regiment were in position, hidden in the tree line. What followed was not a battle, it was a demonstration of tactical superiority. The first Tiger was destroyed at 6:52 a.m. The Tiger's gunner, Gefreiter Hans Müller, had detected movement at 2 o'clock. He began to traverse the turret. It took 19 seconds for the hydraulic traverse to complete the turn. In those 19 seconds, he was already dead. A Sherman Firefly, positioned hull down on a ridge 900 meters away, fired a single 17-pounder round. The high-velocity shot didn't just dent the armor, it punched straight through the Tiger's driver's plate. The tank brewed up instantly, killing all 5 crew members in less than a second. The second Tiger attempted to withdraw. Its commander, Oberleutnant Friedrich Braun, ordered reverse, full speed. The Tiger could manage only 12 km per hour in reverse. Braun didn't stand a chance against the British Comet and Cromwell tanks that now broke cover. These cruisers were fast, reaching speeds of nearly 60 km per hour. They flanked the heavy German Cat while the Fireflies kept it pinned. The final blow came from the rear. A Cromwell put a round directly into the engine compartment, where the armor was only 80 mm thick. The Tiger ignited. Braun was the sole survivor. Richter watched it all from 800 meters away. In his post-war memoirs, he would write, "It was like watching a stag being taken down by a pack of disciplined hounds. They didn't rush us blindly. They used the terrain. They used their terrible long-barreled guns. We were outmaneuvered, outgunned, and outclassed in everything except pride." By 7:30 a.m., Richter's company had lost 6 Tigers. The British had lost 11 Shermans. But what the Germans did not understand was the mathematics of industrial warfare. 11 Shermans lost represented 11 tanks that would be replaced within 72 hours. British logistics, fueled by the massive output of the Commonwealth and American Lend-Lease, were landing hundreds of replacement vehicles at the Channel ports every week. 6 Tigers lost represented 6 months of specialized production that would never be recovered. The Henschel factory in Kassel, producing barely 15 Tigers a month, was being bombed into rubble by the RAF Bomber Command. At 8:15 a.m., Richter made a decision that defined the rest of his war. He ordered the retreat. It wasn't cowardice, it was realism. His 3 remaining Tigers had fuel for maybe 40 kilometers. The German lines were 35 kilometers away. They had zero margin for error. What Richter didn't know was that RAF fighter bombers had destroyed the fuel depot at Stavelot that very morning. There was no petrol waiting for them. At 9:22 a.m., the third Tiger in Richter's column sputtered to a halt. Dry. The commander, Lieutenant Wilhelm Schroeder, ordered his crew to scuttle the machine. They placed demolition charges in the gun breech. The detonation shattered the firing mechanism. The Tiger was useless, a steel corpse left in the snow. At 10:47 a.m., the second Tiger suffered the same fate. Richter's Tiger was the last. He reached the German outpost lines with exactly 3 liters of fuel left in the tank. It wouldn't have been enough to travel another 200 meters. In 3 hours and 41 minutes, the British XXX Corps had destroyed or forced the abandonment of 11 Tigers and 23 support vehicles. They had paid a price in steel, but they held the ground. However, the tactical victory was not the most important lesson. The lesson was strategic. The German Supreme Commander in the West, General Feldmarschall Walter Model, received Richter's report that afternoon. Model was known for his brutal pragmatism. He had saved the army group from total collapse months earlier. What he told his staff was recorded in the war diaries. "We have lost the capacity to wage a war of movement. The British and Americans have more of everything, more tanks, more petrol, more shells, more spares, more men. We can win individual engagements, but we cannot win a war of attrition against an empire that produces more military equipment in a month than we can produce in a year." Model was right. Yet, Hitler ordered the offensive to continue. The Battle of the Bulge would drag on until late January 1945. Germany would lose 100,000 soldiers, 800 tanks, and 1,000 aircraft, resources that were irreplaceable. But let us return to Klaus Richter. His Tiger survived the Ardennes, but he did not survive the war as a combatant. On April 12, 1945, Richter was captured near the River Elbe by British forces when his latest tank ran out of fuel for the 3rd time in 4 months. He spent 2 years in a POW camp in the UK. In an interview in 1967, he was asked what he learned from that morning in December 1944. His answer was revealing. The British soldiers were not better than us in a mystical sense. They weren't more fearless. But they possessed something we could not match. They had unlimited production and perfect logistics. They could lose a squadron of tanks and receive a fresh delivery the next morning. We lost a tiger and mourned it as if we had lost a son. The morning of December 23, 1944, was not the moment Germany lost the war. That moment had passed years prior. What Richter witnessed was simply the mathematical confirmation of a reality the German High Command had ignored for too long. 50 British tanks against 14 Tigers. 3 hours. A division crippled not just by the 17-pounder gun, but by industrial and logistical supremacy. That is the truth German propaganda never admitted, and that is the lesson military historians study to this day. What do you think of this story? Did you know about the role of the Sherman Firefly and British logistics in halting the German armor? Leave a comment and subscribe to our channel. Every week we bring you verified, fascinating stories that changed the course of history. Hit the bell icon so